terms of well-being, is there any tips or advice in terms of any leaders within schools, senior leadership team members, that what they can implement to help improve well-being?
Well, I think a starting point is don't assume that you're tackling workload unless you ask your staff. So I left Chellaston today with a simple form that you can come up with your own version and maybe do it on a Google form that's anonymous, so you get a genuine sense of how staff are feeling about an issue or a policy, or you must mark twice a week or use the purple pen of progress, whatever you've been asked to do. If you don't ask, you don't know, so it's really dangerous to assume. So that would be my first tip for school leaders. And again, this is your well-being day today. I would probably say it'd be nice to have that calendared, so it happens every half term rather than just with tick the box, and it happens once a year, and it doesn't actually make us happier or more effective in our classrooms. Well-being often gets a woolly reputation. So there's a lot of research behind mindfulness and being reflective about our practice. Hattie even talks about being reflective. Videoing myself in the classroom improves my outcomes. So there's lots of things that we can do.
Tim, have you got anything to add in terms of well-being?
I think viewing yourself, you've introduced, I know there's different ways of doing it, but something that's been helping at Chellaston Academy.
Yeah.
The notion of, you've brought in Iris, Matt, and by filming ourselves working, I'm not saying the whole entire lesson, but that's been a really, really positive. And I love this notion of calling it feedback rather than marking.
Yeah, and I would say for the Iris, I've used Iris for nearly 15 years. You can't force staff to do it, and I would definitely advocate to not force people to do it, but the people that don't want to be filmed, introduce a coaching methodology. So I talked about this little structured feedback conversation from a great book called Leverage Leadership, a 5-minute conversation, an agreed focus, and then I kind of coach you through a solution that you come up with rather than me tell you, and you'd find that staff are going to be more engaged, and by choosing just one thing, there's more likely to be an improvement rather than what we always have is a tick list of 30 different boxes on an observation sheet, and I will dance those tick boxes when you come in and observe me, and here lies the problem.
Yeah, I think from today, you don't forget this, but when you mentioned when you observe, you just learn as much. You've spoken about all the times you were observing, and I think that's something we can really forget the joys. And I think something that Matt's brought in is this notion of learning conversations. Initially, before Matt came in, these observations were, your heart start to go thinking, oh, where were we?
But take an NQT or an experience it with you. But what we often don't do is we just assume that how does Ross get a student to move seats? Yeah. So in the coaching, you could call that reverse coaching. So I will articulate what I'm going to do, and watch me do it in a couple of minutes when I go and stand behind Ross, and suddenly he sits up straight, he picks his pen up. Yeah. So because I've articulated my decision, you can at least process and see it happening. Yeah. A video gives you that, but people that don't want to use a video, at least in the class or in our learning walk, you are taking that inexperienced teacher or someone that needs to be better at one thing, you articulate and demonstrate that with the people you're observing, or you're modelling it yourself. It's probably a more effective way of improving teaching.
And it's to do with a cultural change in school, and to get staff to really buy into opening the door to improve their practice is the notion what we talked about, the learning conversation, and it's about the conversation about learning. So in terms of it's a three-way process that we've kind of looked at in terms of the learning conversation. So it's obviously the learning of the students, which is the most important, the learning of the observer, and the learning of the person being observed, and having that triangulation of the process of learning, having that at the core. And like you're saying,
if you started that to change a culture, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to get things embedded, and then you're starting to tweak things in your 4th or 5th year. So it's a slow process, but obviously the higher accountability that's imposed on state schools, you're kind of expected to work quicker and faster, and hence why you have teachers working 55 hours per week, just to keep on top of their day job. So top tip from me is for schools, school leaders, and I mean school leaders in the broadest sense, is to reduce, take away rather than introduce. We just need to keep things simple, do things better, and therefore we can be more effective with our practice or the interventions that we choose to use.